Hey, my name's Barry Devers. I'm the owner of Smokin Pig. Today we're going to be looking at what to expect when you come through the door and you're going to be working behind the line. We do more than just meat back there, but today we're specializing on just what to expect in the meat. Before we get started on that, let me tell you this. You have to be the kind of person that's looking to do the very best they can do regardless of the situation. It's not something that you're not going to, that is hard, it's difficult. It gets hot, it gets busy. I want you to expect that, and I don't want that to take you off guard. But everything that we are here at the Smokin Pig begins with our meat. Our meat takes anywhere from 15 to 18 hours to smoke. That's a lot of time and it's very labor intense. So if our meat is not the very best that it can be, then all the other stuff that comes after that is really, it's just not important as the meat. It's going to be something that we got to be known for what comes out of the smoker and the meat that comes out of here. You're going to get better in time to recognize some of the things that we're going to be showing you today. But in order for us to be on top of our game and really have the upper hand on everything else that comes out of this kitchen, no customer wants to sit at their table and have a big wad of fat come out of their mouth. Some fat's acceptable, some fat's not, and some just don't go away. With that in mind, let's go straight to the cut table now, and let's kind of give you an idea of what to expect. One of the things we're going to want you to look at and remember, these butts are almost identical, one after another. So what you want to do is, everybody's got their certain way they like for it to be on their board. The first thing you got to remember is, you are in front of the meat. You have to use your eyes, you have to use your nose, and all the common sense that God gave you to do this and do a good job at it. The first thing you do when you first open one up is you always want to make sure that your nose is in full intact and you're thinking about what you're smelling. You should never open up a butt and get one ready that you have an unpleasant smell to it, or one that smells different than all the other ones that you smell. That's a telltale sign. You need to get the manager as quietly as possible, put that one to the side and let him check it out if you have any doubts whatsoever. Okay. Once you get your butt on the table here, try to face it the same way every time. Like I said, when you start tearing it apart and breaking it down, you'd like for the bone to be faced the same way every time. That's going to make it less confusing for you, and it just seems to work a little bit better if you know how it's positioned each and every time. The very top part, which we've already pulled off some of it because of the foil sticking, is what we call the fat cap. It usually comes right off. You can just kind of rake it straight down. Now, most of the time when you rake the fat cap off on the very top, there is a small fin of meat right underneath there, which is absolutely wonderful. Now, here's some of the fat that you don't want to ever send out to a customer. That right there is not going to go away with heat. We can see some in a little bit that I can show you will actually dissipate as you chop it. But what you want to do typically with all the butts is just rub your fingers across it, and you'll get anything loose like that you definitely don't want. The meat will actually stick together a little bit better than the fat does. Now, it's easy to do it when you're doing it slow like this, but actually when we're opened up, things are heating up pretty quick, we're getting busy. You have to do this at a much faster pace. This is actually on every butt. You want to look for that. That is a piece of cartridge that will not go away, and it is actually really gross to get in your mouth, so you don't ever want to make sure that's involved in that. What I suggest then is start taking the butt apart a little bit at a time, placing it over there. There again, I'll run my fingers through it. I got some more fat. Trying to separate the good from the bad, mainly using your fingers. See, I just raked my fingers right across that, and I got that big chunk right there. Now, the small membrane with something like this right here, that's no big deal. You can just kind of push that over there. But now here, this ugly piece, you don't want anything like that. It's thicker, and it's... When you get the bigger pieces out like this, there's a big chunk of fat. What I typically do is just rub my fingers right down through there, and you can see that comes off real easy. That meat's perfect, it's ready to go. That one's nothing to do to that. That one's okay. Here's a whole chunk. What I'll probably do is just come down with that, a little bit here. There's a piece of muscle ready to go, piece of meat. That's fine. That's fine. Your bone should come out real easy. If it's sticking, if it's tough to pull away from, you need to get your manager and make sure they're aware of this problem, because that could mean that the butts were not quite cooked long enough. There again, once that pulls out, there's a whole piece you don't have to do anything to. Most of this right here is already picked through, it's good to go. That right there, there's nothing to do to that, it's fine. Out of the whole butt on that one right there, you got a large part of this right here. Like I said, you're still going to have some small stuff. It sticks, that's no big deal. Once you chop it, that pretty much goes away. Now, once you start chopping it, I usually do a whole butt at a time. You'll want to go down through this way, and then you'll actually want to cross it and go the other way. You don't want to chop it up so minced that it's real fine, and you don't want any big chunks, anything, you don't want anything that big. We'll look at it when we get finished. Now I'm going to turn the other way. Okay, there again, the whole time I'm doing this, I'm smelling it, make sure that everything smells right. I'm visually looking. If I saw any fat that I missed, it'll be usually pretty easy to pick out. This meat actually looks wonderful. It smells good. It's got just the right amount of bark to it. Now the next thing you want to do is wrap this in foil. If they don't need it on the table right away, that's fine. If they want it on the table, you can take it straight there. It's best to put it in something, never using your hands trying to cross over, because you're going to drop a good bit of it. And if it's going inside the sham, then you wrap it in foil and you wait until they need it on the line. What you don't want to do is keep on chopping where you got too many rolls. We call this a roll. You don't want to get too many in the sham and business not be picking up. Always make sure the corners are turned up. Whatever grease is in there is great for flavor. We don't want that to run out. So always make sure you turn your ends up and this side's facing up, and never put it down like that, because we don't want that to run out. We want that to stay in there the whole time. Okay, we're moving on to brisket now. Just a few things, just in case you didn't know, brisket is actually a cow. It's beef. And brisket is the toughest part of the cow. It comes at the very front, and there's usually two on each cow. In order to do brisket and do it right is extremely difficult. The brisket's going to vary in size. Now, with the butts, we actually pulled the black part off, what we call the bark. On the brisket, we leave that on tack. Now, one of the first things I look for when I put the brisket on my cutting board is I will feel the ends to make sure that if they're not spongy, if they don't have some juice to them, then I probably am not going to use that. But we need to use as much of the brisket as possible, because the cost in the brisket it's just nothing like the butts. When you get the brisket out here on your cut table, you'll have the choices of usually two different kind of knives. You got this one and you got this one. Sometimes I go back and forth depending on the brisket and how thick it is and how easy it is to manage and stay together. When you cut a brisket, you always want to go at an angle. You never want to go straight up. Always want to cut it, and you always want to give it about I'm going to say about a ½ an inch to an inch in thickness. Now, brisket's a little bit harder to stay together, but when you're doing a plate, you really want to try to get that to stay as intact as much as possible. Now, if you're cutting one plate at a time, that's fine. I'll keep it like that. I'll weigh it, but I'll pick it up like this. I'll put it in the scale. You always want to have it 8 ounces on a plate. Now, if it goes to 9, that's fine, but we're going to try to keep it between 8 and 9 ounces. Believe it or not, if you go down to 7, sometimes the customer, they can pick up on. Okay, we got our plate out here. You'll have 3 sections. The large part is for the meat, whether it's pork, whether it's chicken. There's where you want to put that. These over here for your sides. I've cut just what I needed. You never pre-cut the brisket. I'm going to try to keep it together. And remember, presentation is very important. As you can see, it's all laid there. The customer can see it. It's beautiful to the eye. It takes up plenty of space. We do have some trimmings and stuff like this. Not necessarily going to throw that away. If they get a brisket sandwich, that's exactly what I'll probably put on there, as long as it's not too hard to the touch. If I'm doing a sandwich, I'll probably cut it just a tad thinner. As you can see, that's kind of tearing up, which is okay for a sandwich. I'm going to try the other knife, see how it does. Now, when you're doing a sandwich, it is possible, sometimes you will have to pull off some of the fat cap on top. This one has very little fat cap. There's nothing to pull off of that. If it gets into pretty thick, then you will need to pull that off before putting it on the sandwich, because here, if they don't like the fat cap, it's very easy for them to pull that off. Most of them like it, so that's why we leave it on. But if you're doing a sandwich, you gotta be real careful about how much fat you put on there. This right here is really falling apart real nice. I may just hit it twice just to make sure. There you go. That'll go into the scale, and from the scale we'll put it straight onto the sandwich, and then the bun slightly to the side. We've done the pork butts, we've done the beef brisket, and now we're going to do the chopped chicken. Biggest thing to remember is that there is bones in the chicken, and it's real easy to send that out. It's the biggest complaint we typically have on chicken. So when pulling the chicken, please make sure that before you put that on a plate, that chicken doesn't have any bones in it. The chicken on the board, when they buy a chicken plate, they get the whole breast. Sometimes they're bigger than this, sometimes they're smaller. It should never go under 6 ounces. If you think that it's unusually small, you need to check that weight. But if it's 7, 8 ounces, that's typically what you end up with. That's fine. All you want to do is take your fingers, pull the skin off. This is one few of the products that we really don't want any skin going out with it. Then if you'll, I don't know if you can see that or not, if you'll push your finger underneath that chicken, if it's done right, will come up really easy. Now, right in here is the bone that is real easy to break off, and you can hardly ever tell it. So when you feel the chicken, this part right in here is where you'll find that little bone. I'll come over to the other side, dig down, and it really comes off quite easy. There again, I'm feeling right there to see if I feel anything that's poking me or anything like that. I'll put those together. I'll go back in there just to make sure that I got as much as I could. There's not much meat left on there, but there is a little bit. If you have the time, that's a great thing to do. Now, that's pretty much all there is to it. You really need to, let's go over this too. You really need to have, this is for your pork. You really need a knife for brisket, and you also need a knife for chicken. It's really best not to ever cross these if you can keep from it. Believe it or not, some people don't like the fact, or they don't like chicken, and if you cut your chicken and then you go do pork with it or beef, you can kind of give that taste, and they may send it back thinking there's something wrong with it because it don't taste exactly right. Nevertheless, what I have here is a real pretty chicken breast ready to cut up. Typically, all you need is about 3 cuts, and that's about it. You don't want anything too much bigger than that, but as you can tell, it's just falling apart, and it's ready with a plastic fork or a knife. It'll be easily broke up. You don't want to mince it too much. Now, if I'm cutting this for a sandwich, and there again, it gets the whole breast. If it's a regular sandwich, if it's a junior sandwich, it actually only gets half of the breast, which means you'll take either half, and that's fine. If it's a sandwich, you may want to hit it about 3 more times. If you mince it up too much, it won't stay on the bun. That's ready to go. You put it in a little bowl, you give it to the people behind you that's calling for the chicken sandwich. They'll pick it up, they'll put it on the sandwich, and they'll lay the bun just to the side. That right there is what I would probably say is a perfect size. That's a good size. Anything smaller than that is going to get to the minced, but if you get too big, something like that, one piece, when they pull it off, it's going to be hanging out their mouth, and it may a little bit be hard for them to handle.